Just not getting it.
Rio, the new Dr. Phil.
And we are back.
Man, this is a real podcast. You know why? Because it's the Loft Party Podcast. And I'm just saying.
The views and opinions expressed by the Loft Party Podcast panel participants and guests do not necessarily reflect those of the Good Times with Good People Company, the host, or its sponsors.
Welcome, everybody out there in podcast land. The Good Times with Good People Company proudly presents the Loft Party Podcast, where it is always about good times, good people, and good talk. Now that you've received your invitation, the best way to let us know that you're in attendance is to download the party or become official by joining us on Facebook, subscribing on YouTube, iTunes Podcasts, or Google Play Podcasts. Good. Thanks for joining us. Grab a cocktail, light a cigar, or whatever you like to smoke. Share us with your friends, and make yourself at home. I'm your host and moderator, Rio, and let's introduce today's panel. Hey out there in podcast land, what's good? I'm your host, Rio, and welcome to the Loft Party Podcast, episode 104. At least you've got your health. First and foremost, I want to welcome our listeners in New Zealand, Ghana, and Spain. Thank you all for telling a friend and joining the party. Now, a little talk about healthcare in this country. Some personal tales of when you or someone you know was really sick. No Healthcare Act talk, not really. But in a perfect world, what would our healthcare system look like to you? But before we get started, let's introduce today's panel. And before we get into important things, let's get into important things. Actually, before we do that, let's introduce today's panel. So, first, I've got my returning champion, Chris O'Connor. You know what? Normally, I go through their credentials. I think you've heard their credentials enough by now. Chris O'Connor is a jack of all trades. He would probably say a master of none, but definitely he knows this media game a little bit. Big Dave Elliott, of course, he's the owner of CMP Construction. Brian Massey, he is our resident brain mass. Ben Roberts, he is our bartender extraordinaire here at the Pendergast Club, and Jordan Bradbury. They're all joining me today on this episode. So, before we get into important things, let's get into important things. And first thing is, what are we drinking? And today we are drinking the Kansas City Manhattan. To tell you the truth, this may not necessarily be the Rieger website's Kansas City Manhattan per se. So to explain a Manhattan, Ben Roberts is here to tell us all about what's in a Manhattan.
Okay, so our Kansas City Manhattan is with J. Rieger whiskey. I'm going to start off with 3 shakes of Angostura bitters, about an ounce of sweet vermouth, just whatever's normal, Dolan works, and typically 2 ounces of our Kansas City whiskey, stirred to chill and dilution, and either served up or on the rocks with some cherries.
Sounds delicious, and anytime I get the opportunity here on the podcast, that is my personal favorite drink. And Brain Master and I often go to other restaurants and see what their Manhattans look like. And I will say, they generally don't measure up.
Well, they also don't have Ben Roberts.
This is true.
Marinated.
That's why he is
bourbon-soaked,
bartender.
wicked-ass cherries.
That's all. Yeah, because he makes his own cherries and the whole nine. It's a thing. You got to come down here and check us out. So, now that we know what we're drinking, what are we smoking? And today we're smoking number 20 on Cigar Aficionado's Top 25, the Manhattan, the Macanudo Inspirado Orange. So, they've got several tiers in this new Macanudo lines. They've got the black that goes into like catalogs, and orange goes into like brick and mortar stores. So, so this is far more full-bodied than anything Macanudo normally does. For most people who know Macanudo, they're usually a pretty light cigar. But it's definitely a much more evolved Macanudo cigar. It's very rich, buttery, has some leather and mesquite notes, and it's kind of finished with even a little almond and black pepper. It's got Honduran wrapper and binder, and the filler is a combination of Dominican, Honduran, and Nicaraguan tobacco. And actually at $6.99, a really reasonable and really good smoke. So now that we know what we are drinking and what we're smoking, we're going to go to today's R.I.Ps. And I'm going to start with, so on our last episode, we were talking about separating the art from the artist, and we were talking about how Spotify had taken a couple of artists off of their playlists, not off of their service, but off their playlist, one of which was XXX Tentacion. And since our last show, he was actually killed down in Florida, and he passed away at age 20. We have got, for anybody out there who's a fan of The Office, Hugh Dane. He was Hank the security guard on The Office. He passed away at 75. Famous or infamous, depending on who you talk to, patriarch of the Jackson family, Joe Jackson, passed away at 89. And Richard Harrison, for all of you who like some forms of reality TV, he was the old man on Pawn Stars who ran the Vegas pawn shop. He passed away at 77. So from R.I.Ps, we go to happy birthdays, and some of these are today, and a couple of these are from the past couple of weeks, but I thought they were notable enough to say. Chris Pratt is 39 now. Lana Del Rey is 33. Anybody who has not heard any Lana Del Rey music, do yourself a favor. I think you will enjoy it. Prince William is 36. Anybody out there who's a fan of Empire, Jussie Smollett, he is the son, so there's two sons, one raps and one sings. He's the son that sings. He is 35. Iron Mike Tyson turns 52 today. That made me feel old. Big time. And Michael Phelps turned 33 today, which also made me feel old because I thought he was older than that. But, you know, hey, it is all good. If you can make it to the Olympics as many times as he has before 33, you put in your 10,000 hours, which is exactly what we talked about on the last podcast. So, with all that, we'll be right back. Hey, you can search for the Loft Party Podcast on iTunes Podcasts, Google Play Podcasts, and on our Good Times with Good People YouTube channel. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook, tweet us on Twitter, and if you like the content we provide, donate to us on Patreon. www.patreon.com/Loft Party Podcast. You can find all of our links below. And now back to our regularly scheduled program. And we are back, and before we get too deep, let's play a quick party game. So, did you ever play sick or call in sick and karma got you almost immediately? So, I'm going to start with Big Dave, and we're going to work our way around.
You know, I'm sure I did. And then I'm sure I probably had a wicked hangover or had a girl in bed or something. I don't know. There was always something back in the day that probably caused me not to go in.
And we are back to the theme running with Big Dave. Something to do with a girl, just
I
remember.
like the girls. Liked them early on. And I can't remember a time that I did because I have a very strong work ethic and I go to work. And I like money. And without money, I can't get the girls. Bingo.
Okay.
And
Fair enough.
I can't remember any bad karma. I don't remember getting fired over it or anything like that. But I'm sure back in the day, the way I partied, that I probably didn't make it to work 1 or 2 times.
Yeah. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I didn't call in sick a whole lot, but I know that I've used that excuse to get out of like going out with people before. Like if you want to go out with a different girl than we were supposed to, you call in sick, go out, and I'm sure I got caught a couple. I know I got caught a couple times. So yeah, I never called in sick to a job.
Okay. But karma got you because you got caught.
I mean, karma was doing me a favor. But yeah.
Was her name Karma, or was
That might be right.
I think I had, no, that was Carmen. I got mixed up.
Okay. What about you, Ben?
I can't think of anything specific, but I'm sure my early restaurant days, there were many shifts that I know for a fact that I've certainly slept through a shift or two. I've never been much of a day shift guy. So yeah, there were a couple times that got me in hot water. But I never like fake called in sick and had, anything like that happen. Just not related to me.
Yeah. George?
Yeah, I think my thing wasn't really a job. It was basketball practice from what I can remember right now. I really didn't call in. I just had my roommate say, hey, I wasn't feeling well. We had morning practice and conditioning season and so on. And said, hey, George's not feeling well. He couldn't make it today or whatnot. Coach, what's wrong with him? He's been throwing up. And, put the works on it. So Coach came to the house. And I just remember he barged in my room and everything. Man, you're not sick. And I really couldn't. I was playing video games or something like that.
Busted.
Immediate karma.
Yeah, he just busted me. So that was probably the karma that came back quick. So I picked up a bunch of extra suicides or some shit like that he put on me.
Yeah, no, that's something I do in business. I called out Roberto today who works for me.
Yeah.
He's a good kid. But he's been missing some Mondays here and there, and they get to be patterns. You start looking back in the books, and you see patterns, right? Mm-hmm. So I texted him, called him out. And, that's a good thing to get called out every once in a while, isn't it, George? It kind of makes you snap and say, the main reason it makes you snap is because this person gives a shit about me.
Right.
He wants me to do well, and I'm slacking. And he's going to come rap me on the head a little bit and say, come on, you're better than this. Get it going.
There you go. So what do we think of Brain Mass?
I don't know that I've actually ever called in sick when I wasn't sick, other than I have in the past had a day where I knew I needed to take like just a mental day.
Right.
And so I didn't feel guilty about that, but I think there's been days where I've thought I want to call in sick, but my guilt would get me too much. And I just know it. And there have been days where I did call in sick because I was actually sick, and then ended up working because there was so much to do. So
Yeah. So your own conscience has been your karma.
Yeah, I know better.
Yeah. I definitely know there's been once or twice where, like you say, I really just needed a day, and so I called in sick and then wound up being sick within a week of calling in. So I stopped calling in sick.
Well, I think there's been a lot of people, maybe not in this group here, but a lot of people been out there, they call in sick, and you're out at a bar later on that day, and boom, busted.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the ugly. That's the real ugly, because there ain't no hiding. There ain't no place to run. You can't hide under a table. You may try, but you may try to get out the back door. Generally, you're busted.
Yeah, that was the mistake you don't go out. You stay in.
Yeah, you stay in the house.
Yeah,
although I do remember one time, a good friend of mine, he called in sick, and this is when I was living in Seattle, and summertime in Seattle, they have a thing that is really a thing out there. They call it the summer sickness because there's only so many months of the year that the sun's even out. So when the sun's out, a lot of people call off because they want to enjoy the weather while they can. So he calls off sick, and we wind up going to this Green Lake, this park, and we're out there and we're chilling, and he looks up and he goes, "Oh fuck," and I'm like, "What?" He goes, "That's my boss right there." And I was like, oh. And there was another one of those, we got to figure out a way to back out slowly and get to the parking lot before his boss sees him.
I had forgot a good one, being running crews and owning a business as long as I have, I hear every excuse in the book at one time or another. This one was got the young man fired. Okay? Marshall was a good kid. He worked fairly good, but he would just miss days a little too often. So he texted the foreman that he had to meet with his lawyer and go to court, which is pretty common. You get that. But it was President's Day. So with some, I must admit I had a little bit of joy in doing this. Texted him and letting him know that he needed to call me. Right. And because he was fired because there's no courts open on President's Day. So if you're going to lie, boy, and I told him, I said, you need to figure out what lie you need to use on what day, because that did not work, you damn fool.
That sounded like that worked. That sounded like that worked for him at all.
Yeah, I knew somebody who said they were in jail. And whenever they came back, they were asked for documentation about said state. Unable to produce, of course.
Of course.
We had a guy whose grandma died 4 times.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's bad karma to do that shit.
Yeah, I've never used like a family member's health on any occasion. That's bad.
That's bad karma.
We had a sales girl who worked for us, and she called in, distraught, said her uncle was a sheriff in Sedalia, Missouri, and had gotten in a high-speed chase, and it ended up with him getting shot, and he was life-flighted to KU Med for some reason. It was very complex and very intricate.
Oh boy, she had it all in tail.
It was amazingly well thought through.
Yeah, so much.
Except for a cop getting shot makes the news all the time. So I started looking around, and there was nothing. There was another cop who had gotten in a high-speed chase. The guy got out of the car and he ran and he fell down an embankment and it hurt his back. But that's the closest I could find. Right. So I called Sedalia, I called the newspaper. Not even trying to bust her. We were just trying to send flowers or whatever. And then I don't know what the hell you're talking about. No cop's been shot around here in 50 years. Like, oh my God. So when we went in to fire her, she, had to turn in her laptop and she was writing up an obituary in her Word document. She even came to us and asked help to write the eulogy. She really played it out. Wow. It was awesome.
That is hilarious.
Well, you should have kept her on.
I was just going to say, for that much,
she was great.
For that much imagination, that's amazing.
She had sold anything, I would have thought about it.
That sounds like Costanza. Like, that sounds like George Costanza.
It actually does sound like Costanza.
A good-looking girl, George Costanza.
That is funny. All right. And with that,
pretty good.
We'll be right back. Hey out there in podcast land, we would not be doing our duty if we didn't acknowledge the sponsors of the Loft Party Podcast, the Majestic Restaurant and Jazz Club, and the Majestic's Pendergast Club. The Majestic carries on Kansas City's tradition of great food and jazz. Let them show you why they are the classic Kansas City steakhouse experience. 931 Broadway, just 3 blocks from the Kansas City Convention Center. J. Rieger and Company, a Kansas City distillery. Whether whiskey, gin, or vodka, neat or on the rocks, J. Rieger, Kansas City, sipping good since 1887. C&P Construction, Kansas City's premier wood framers. 50 years of quality framing and craftsmanship. Just email david.cnpservice@gmail.com and start building something new today. And our friend and frequent guest, Lane Boland. Thank you all for all that you do.